In this story, I'm going to take you somewhere extraordinary. Somewhere that has no coordinates on any map, no address that can be typed into a search engine, no path that can be found by following signs on a road. Tonight, we are going to a place that lives inside you, that has always lived inside you, a place that most people pass right by every single day of their lives without ever knowing it's there. We are going to the realm of infinite powers. So take one long, slow breath in. Let it fill your chest gently. And as you breathe out, allow your eyes to grow a little heavier. There is a place that exists between one breath and the next, between the last thought of the day and the soft dark of sleep. Most people pass through this place every single night without ever knowing what it truly is. They call it the moment of drifting off. They call it the edge of consciousness. But in truth, what they are crossing every single time is the threshold of the realm of infinite powers. It is not a place you can visit with your body. It has no stone walls, no cobblestone roads, no gates of iron and oak. And yet it has all of those things because the realm is built entirely from thought. Every archway, every tower, every bridge over every river that flows through that world, all of it was first a single idea held in a single human mind before it became anything else at all. That is the first truth of the realm. Thought comes before everything. Think about that for a moment as you lie here in the quiet. Everything in the human-built world started as a thought. The chair a carpenter once envisioned before the first piece of wood was cut. The symphony that existed as a trembling feeling in a composer's chest before a single note was written down. The bridge spanning the river, the engine turning over in the cold morning, the medicine that changed what was survivable. All of it was a thought first, an interior event, something that happened in the silence behind a face before anything happened in the world. Long before a cathedral stands against a winter sky, it stands first in the mind of an architect. Long before a novel sits on a shelf and changes someone's life, it floats through the imagination of a writer who is not yet sure what they are doing. Long before a business opens its doors, long before a family is built, long before a life is shaped into something meaningful, the thought comes first. Every single time, without exception, the realm knows this. The realm was made from this. Our traveler for tonight has no name yet. Names come later, in the waking world, where things must be labeled to be understood. For now, they're simply a consciousness, a soft glow of awareness, the kind that flickers at the edge of sleep when the mind is calm and the body has grown heavy. They have been walking a long road in the waking world, carrying a weight they cannot quite name. In this story, I'm going to take you somewhere extraordinary, somewhere that has no coordinates on any map, no address that can be typed into a search engine, no path that can be found by following signs on a road. Tonight, we are going to a place that lives inside you, that has always lived inside you, a place that most people pass right by every single day of their lives without ever knowing it's there. We are going to the realm of infinite powers. So take one long, slow breath in. Let it fill your chest gently. And as you breathe out, allow your eyes to grow a little heavier. There is a place that exists between one breath and the next, between the last thought of the day and the soft dark of sleep. Most people pass through this place every single night without ever knowing what it truly is. They call it the moment of drifting off. They call it the edge of consciousness. But in truth, what they are crossing every single time is the threshold of the realm of infinite powers. It is not a place you can visit with your body. It has no stone walls, no cobblestone roads, no gates of iron and oak. And yet it has all of those things because the realm is built entirely from thought. Every archway, every tower, every bridge over every river that flows through that world, all of it was first a single idea held in a single human mind before it became anything else at all. That is the first truth of the realm. Thought comes before everything. Think about that for a moment as you lie here in the quiet. Everything in the human-built world started as a thought. The chair a carpenter once envisioned before the first piece of wood was cut. The symphony that existed as a trembling feeling in a composer's chest before a single note was written down. The bridge spanning the river. The engine turning over in the cold morning. The medicine that changed what was survivable. All of it was a thought first. An interior event. Something that happened in the silence behind a face, before anything happened in the world. Long before a cathedral stands against a winter sky, it stands first in the mind of an architect. Long before a novel sits on a shelf and changes someone's life, it floats through the imagination of a writer who is not yet sure what they are doing. Long before a business opens its doors, long before a family is built, long before a life is shaped into something meaningful, the thought comes first. Every single time, without exception, the realm knows this. The realm was made from this. Our traveler for tonight has no name yet. Names come later, in the waking world, where things must be labeled to be understood. For now, they are simply a consciousness, a soft glow of awareness, the kind that flickers at the edge of sleep when the mind is calm and the body has grown heavy. They have been walking a long road in the waking world, carrying a weight they cannot quite name. The air carries the faintest sound of something like music, though it is not quite music. It is more like the feeling of music, the way a piece of music can make your chest open up without you quite knowing why. They walk and the realm receives them. And somewhere behind them, in the world they have left for now, their body sinks a little deeper into the softness of the bed.
Come?
There is so much to see. At the center of the realm, there burns what the ancients of this place call the first flame. You can feel it before you see it. As the traveler makes their way along the central path, following the warm golden glow that spreads across the indigo sky like the first light of dawn, they become aware of something changing in the air. A warmth. Not the burning kind of warmth, not the kind that makes you flinch and pull away, but the sustaining kind. The kind that finds the cold places inside you and softens them. The kind that reminds you of something you had forgotten, some old feeling of possibility, of aliveness, of wanting something so much that the wanting itself is almost sweet. The first flame stands in a great circular clearing, surrounded by smooth pale stone. It is enormous, reaching perhaps 20 feet into the air, and it burns in every shade of orange and amber and gold. At its edges, where the heat is gentlest, it glows a soft blue, the blue of a gas flame on a stove, and then it deepens into orange, and at its heart, at the very center where the fire is truest, It burns white. White and still, the way a flame can sometimes appear perfectly still even while everything around it is in motion. Travelers come to this flame from all corners of the realm. The traveler watches them arrive as they enter the clearing. Some walk quickly, with purpose, already leaning toward the fire as though drawn by it. Others come slowly, almost reluctantly, as though they are not entirely sure they belong here. Others still arrive and immediately step back, finding a position at the outermost ring of the clearing at a comfortable distance from the heat. And here is what the traveler notices and what they will not forget. The flame responds. To those who walk forward with purpose, the flame surges. Just slightly, just for a moment, a brightening, a reaching upward, as though it recognizes something in the person approaching. To those who arrive slowly, the flame is steady but unchanged. And to those who retreat to the outer edge and watch from a distance, the flame dims. The smallest perceptible dimming, no more than a candle losing the slightest fraction of its light. But there, if you are paying attention, there is an old woman seated on one of the pale stones near the flame. Her face is weathered and kind, and her eyes catch the firelight in a way that makes them seem as though they are burning with their own small flame from the inside. She watches the traveler approach and nods, as though she has been expecting them. "You want to know what the flame is," she says. Not a question. "Yes," says the traveler. "The flame is desire," she says simply. "Real desire. Not wishing, not hoping, not the gentle hoping that lives at a safe distance from disappointment. I mean the burning kind of desire that gets into your bones, that makes you restless and alive and unable to imagine settling for less. That kind." She pauses, and the flame crackles softly between them. "People confuse wanting with desiring," she continues. "Wanting is comfortable. You can want something your whole life and never move a single inch toward it because the wanting itself is pleasant enough. It gives you something to dream about in the evenings. It does not ask anything of you. But desire is different. Desire is specific. It has a name and a shape and a clear picture attached to it. And desire, real desire, is uncomfortable because it insists. It doesn't let you rest. It gets you up in the morning. It keeps you awake at night for the right reasons. It says, yes, this thing, this particular thing, and I will not stop until I have it or I have become someone entirely new trying. The traveler looks at the flame. They think of the thing they want, not the vague sense of better, not the shapeless feeling that life could be bigger, but the specific thing, the actual thing. When they hold it clearly in their mind, when they give it a shape and a name, the flame brightens. Not dramatically, not like a special effect, just a degree warmer, a shade more golden. "Name it," the old woman says gently, not out loud, to yourself. "Get very specific. Not, I want success. Not, I want to feel better about things. Something real. What is it that you actually specifically want?" And the traveler thinks. And the flame holds steady, waiting. The silence of the clearing is very deep. Other travelers have wandered off, and for a moment it is just the traveler and the woman and the fire. And what happens in that moment of genuine specificity, when the mind stops circling the idea of the thing and actually lands on the thing itself, is remarkable. The body responds. There is something that happens in the chest, in the breath, in the quality of attention. Desire, when it is truly named and truly felt, is a physical experience. It lives in the body as much as in the mind. This is not accidental. This is the mechanism. Napoleon Hill, who spent 20 years studying more than 500 people he classified as the most successful in their fields in America, found that across every domain, business, art, science, politics, athletics, the one quality shared by all of them was not intelligence, not education, not family background or starting circumstances. It was a particular quality of desire. Not wishing, not hoping. A burning, specific, emotionally charged desire that functioned more like obsession than preference. A desire so fully owned that it operated like a navigational system, constantly orienting the person toward it, shaping decisions, filtering opportunities, sustaining effort through the inevitable periods of difficulty when everything else failed to provide motivation. This is also, by the way, neurologically real. When you hold a specific goal with strong positive emotion, the brain's reward circuitry becomes engaged. The neurochemicals associated with motivation, dopamine in particular, begin to flow not as a reward for reaching the goal, but as part of the pursuit itself. This is sometimes called the wanting system, and it is extraordinarily powerful. The wanting system drives action at a very deep level, but it requires specificity to activate. It does not respond well to vagueness. It needs a target. It needs the actual thing. This is what the traveler thinks about, standing at the first flame. And the flame burns on, steady and generous, waiting for the thought that will make it surge. The traveler stands by the first flame for a long time. The warmth of it is pleasant. The clearing around them is quiet, and the other travelers have begun to drift away to other parts of the realm. The sky above is deepening toward its most beautiful shade of indigo. And when the traveler finally turns to leave, carrying the clear shape of their desire in their chest like a small warm coal, the flame watches them go, still burning, still bright. From the center of the realm, the traveler follows one of the long glowing paths outward, and it leads them to a place where the sky is low, not oppressively low, not like a ceiling pressing down, but close, the way the sky can sometimes feel on a clear, cold night when the stars seem near enough to touch. Here in this part of the realm, the sky seems to breathe, to shift and move with a slow, gentle rhythm, and the stars embedded within it are unlike any stars the traveler has seen before. Each one is different. Some burn fierce and unwavering, brilliant points of white and blue, holding their light with a steadiness that feels almost like confidence. Others flicker, not with the pretty, romantic flicker of a candle, but with an uncertain quality, as though the star is not quite sure of its right to shine. And others still seem to be fading, dimming slowly, their edges soft and indistinct, not extinguished, but not fully present either. A young man is standing in the middle of the path, looking up. He has the look of someone who has been standing here for a long time, and he turns as the traveler approaches. "Do you know what they are?" he asks. "Stars," says the traveler. "They are beliefs, the young man says. He points to one of the fiercest, most unwavering ones, burning steadily overhead. That one belongs to someone who believes, truly believes, that what they want is possible. Not just hopes it, believes it. You can feel the difference, can't you? Hope is looking up at a flame and thinking how nice it would be if it were yours. Belief is looking at a flame and knowing, in the deepest part of yourself, that it is already heading toward you. The traveler looks at the flickering stars. There are many of them, more perhaps than the steady ones. What makes them flicker? The traveler asks. Doubt, the young man says simply. Not all doubt is the same, though. Some doubt is healthy, the kind that asks questions, that keeps you honest, that stops you from becoming overconfident in ways that could hurt you. That kind of doubt is useful. But there is another kind, the kind that says, this is not for me. The kind that says, people like me don't get to have things like this. The kind that has been told so many times by so many different voices, from childhood, from disappointment, from the casual cruelties of others, that it has settled in and made itself at home in the bones, until you cannot tell anymore whether it is something you genuinely believe or something you were given. He pauses. Above them, a star flickers and dims slightly. That kind of doubt, the young man continues, dim the stars. Because here's the thing about belief that most people find uncomfortable. Your brain does not particularly distinguish between what you tell it is true and what actually is. It processes both with the same machinery. Tell it with enough repetition and enough emotional force that you are not capable, and it will begin to find evidence for that everywhere it looks. It will filter the world through that lens. It will notice every small failure and dismiss every small success. Tell it with the same repetition and the same feeling that you are becoming capable, that this particular thing is possible for you, and the filtering shifts. The same brain in the same world begins to notice different things. This is not mystical. This is neurological. The brain's reticular activating system, a network of neurons that acts like a filter for incoming information, tunes itself to whatever you tell it matters. People who buy a specific kind of car begin to see that car everywhere on the roads. They were always there. The filter just changed. The brain works this way with beliefs as well. The stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we are capable of shape, in very literal ways, what our brains allow us to perceive as possible. The traveler looks up at the sky. They think about the specific desire they found at the first flame, still warm in their chest. And they ask themselves honestly, not performatively, but honestly, whether they believe it is possible. Not whether they can explain how it will happen. Not whether they can map every step. Just whether, in the quiet part of themselves, they believe it is achievable. A star above them, not bright yet, but no longer flickering, holds steady for a moment. The young man smiles. You don't have to force it, he says. Belief builds. It layers like sediment. You add to it a little every day, gently, repeatedly, with feeling. He looks back up at the sky, at all those living, breathing points of light. All of those steady stars up there, every single one of them started as a flicker. Not one of them was steady from the beginning. They steadied over time, through practice, through remembering, The traveler stands beneath the stars for a long time, letting the night settle around them. And the sky above the realm breathes softly. In and out, in and out. Beneath the rolling hills of the realm, there is a place that most travelers do not immediately discover. It requires a certain kind of slowness to find, a willingness to leave the main paths and follow the quiet, to pay attention to things that are easy to overlook. But the traveler finds it. They follow a gentle slope downward, past a grove of silver-leafed trees whose branches make a sound like soft whispers in a wind, and at the base of a hill they find an entrance cut directly into the earth. Wooden doors, rounded at the top, ancient and warm to the touch. And beyond those doors, the library of the subconscious. It goes further down than seems possible. The traveler descends a curved staircase of pale stone, and with each step, the air grows quieter, until all they can hear is their own breathing and a faint sound that they eventually identify as the turning of pages. Everywhere they look, shelves, carved into the stone walls, stretching from floor to ceiling in every direction. And on those shelves, books. Thousands of them. Hundreds of thousands, perhaps. All of them worn. All of them thumbed through and soft at the spines. A woman in a gray robe moves between the shelves. She is a librarian, and she moves with the particular quiet efficiency of someone utterly at home in their work. She carries books back and forth, places them, retrieves them, adds new volumes to shelves already crowded with old ones. "What is this place?" the traveler asks. The librarian pauses and looks at them with calm, patient eyes. "Every thought you have ever thought consistently," she says, "becomes a book. Every idea you have returned to again and again, every belief you have rehearsed, every story you have told yourself repeatedly about who you are and what the world is like, it is all here, organized by repetition. The thoughts you have had only once or twice are thin pamphlets, barely noticed on the lower shelves. The thoughts you have returned to 1,000 times are thick, well-read volumes that occupy the prime positions, the eye-level shelves, the most accessible places." The traveler looks around with new eyes. They can see what she means. Some books are enormous, their covers soft and faded from handling, placed at the center of shelves in positions of obvious importance. Others are barely there at all. Thin and new and uncreased, slid in between older volumes, as though still finding their place. "The subconscious," the librarian continues, moving to straighten a volume on a nearby shelf, "does not evaluate what it is given. It does not decide what deserves to be kept. It simply receives what is sent down repeatedly, with enough feeling attached to it, and it files it away. And then, and this is the part that matters, it organizes your experience of the world according to what it has been given. The body responds to the contents of this library without your conscious awareness. The choices you make, the patterns you repeat, the things you notice, and the things you overlook, the library influences all of it." She picks up a thick, heavy book from a prominent shelf and holds it out. The traveler reads the title. It is something uncomfortable, one of those stories people tell themselves when they are scared. One of those beliefs that was planted long ago by circumstances that no longer exist, but which has been revisited so many times that it now sits in this most visible position, shaping things from the shadows. Can it be changed? The traveler asks. The librarian almost smiles. Why do you think I am here? She says. She sets the old book down and picks up something new from a cart beside the nearest shelf. A fresh volume, its cover crisp, its pages unmarked. She places it on the same shelf as the old one, but in front of it, blocking it slightly, giving it prominence. Repetition, she says. New thoughts, repeated consistently and felt deeply, begin to build new volumes. And the new volumes, over time, come to occupy the position that the old ones once held. The old books do not disappear entirely. That is not how the mind works. But they are no longer the first thing reached for. They are no longer the primary influence. She pauses and adjusts the new volume so it sits perfectly. The subconscious can only be directed through habit, she says. Through consistent repetition. Through returning again and again to the thoughts and stories and beliefs that you want to be present, and doing so with genuine emotion, because emotion is the ink in this library. Plain thought without emotion leaves only a faint impression. Thought charged with feeling writes deeply. The traveler walks slowly between the shelves, running their fingers along the spines of books. They think about the thoughts they repeat most often. They wonder which ones sit at eye level in this library. They think about which ones they would like to move. And here is something the librarian says, as though reading the thought. People come here and see a book they do not want to have at eye level, something they've been telling themselves for years that no longer serves them, and they want to take it off the shelf entirely. To delete it, to burn it, and start clean. She shakes her head. It does not work that way. You cannot unpublish what has already been written here. You cannot reach in and remove something that has been repeated 1,000 times. The ink is too deep. She pauses. But you can write something new. Something that, with enough repetition and enough emotional energy behind it, eventually takes the prominent position. Not by destroying the old volume, by outpublishing it. This is, word for word, what modern neuroscience calls synaptic competition. Neural pathways do not disappear simply because you stop using them. They weaken over time through a process called synaptic pruning, but they do not vanish. The pathway that was built by years of negative self-talk or fearful thinking does not cease to exist the first time you choose a different thought. But the new pathway, the one built through consistent repetition of the new thought, charged with genuine feeling, grows stronger. And as it grows stronger, it becomes the brain's preferred route. The familiar path, not the only path. The default, not the destiny. This is the science of autosuggestion, a term Napoleon Hill used, and one that neurologists have since dressed in more sophisticated language without fundamentally changing the meaning. What you repeatedly suggest to yourself, with enough conviction and enough feeling, becomes what the brain processes as true. Not because the brain is naive, but because the brain is economical. It builds highways where traffic is heavy and lets the unused paths grow over. Feed it the same thought often enough, and it builds a highway. The traveler sits for a moment on a low wooden step between two shelves. The library is quiet around them. The only sound is the distant, constant turning of pages from deeper in the stacks. the background sound of the subconscious at its perpetual work of filing and organizing and sorting. They think about one specific thought they would like to see take a more prominent position on these shelves. They hold it. They add feeling to it. Not performance, not affirmation recited by rote, but genuine, embodied engagement with the idea. The feeling of it, the rightness of it, the truth of it, even though it is still a truth under construction. Somewhere in the deeper stacks, a new volume appears. It is thin. It is fresh. Its cover is bright. But it is there. And the library breathes around them, quiet and patient, as it always has. As it always will, waiting to be filled with the thoughts they choose. When the traveler emerges from the library back into the open air of the realm, they find themselves at the edge of a great plain. It stretches out before them, wide and flat, and across it they can see something that makes them stop and watch. People are building, not with any conventional materials, no wood, no steel, no concrete. The builders of the realm work with something stranger and more fundamental. They work with intention, with focused will, and the roads and bridges and structures they create rise from the plain slowly, stone by stone, in direct response to their movement. The traveler watches one builder who has been standing perfectly still at the center of the plain for what appears to be a very long time. The builder's eyes are closed. Their expression is composed, thoughtful, peaceful even. Around them, the ground remains completely bare. No road, no structure, just the flat gray earth of the plain, unchanged. Not far from this still figure, another builder is moving. Walking in a particular direction across the plain with steady, purposeful steps. And behind each step, the ground shifts. Stone rises. A path forms, not dramatically, not all at once, but consistently, one step, one stone, one step, one stone. Slow, continuous, undeniable. There are other builders too. One has started and stopped 3 times. The traveler can see the beginning of roads that trail off, each of them a short burst of stone before the plain goes bare again. The builder is now sitting at the edge of the nearest incomplete road, looking at it with a complicated expression. Not despair exactly. More like someone doing the arithmetic of effort and trying to decide whether the numbers work. There is a builder further out, almost at the distant edge of the plain, whose road is long and well made and extending steadily. From this distance, the traveler cannot see this builder's face clearly, but they can see the movement, regular and unhurried, the movement of someone who decided a long time ago that this was the direction they were walking, and who has simply continued. Not with any visible excitement, not with any particular drama, just continuing. The traveler approaches the moving builder and walks beside them for a while. "How did you know where to walk?" the traveler asks. "I decided," the builder says simply, without slowing their pace. "I decided the direction, and then I began. The road didn't exist before I walked it. It only comes into being as I walk." "And the person standing still?" the traveler asks. "In the center of the plain?" The builder glances over briefly. "Thinking," they say, "which is not a problem. Thinking is important. Planning is important. But they've been thinking for a very long time. And thinking on its own builds nothing here. The road only forms when you move. This is perhaps the most practical lesson of the realm. Desire without action is a pleasant story told to oneself. Belief without movement is a beautiful lantern that illuminates nothing because it is never carried anywhere. In study after study of high achievers, in business, in athletics, in creative fields, in sciences, the pattern that emerges most clearly is not that successful people are free of doubt or that they always know the right path before they begin. The pattern is that they begin. They move while the certainty is still forming. They build the road by walking it, and the walking teaches them things that no amount of standing still would ever have taught them. The traveler walks alongside the builder for a while, watching the road form behind them, watching the plain transform. The sky overhead has shifted to a warm amber, and the stars that were faint earlier are beginning to strengthen with the deepening of the sky. What if you choose the wrong direction? The traveler asks. The builder glances over with something close to amusement. Then you learn something, they say. You correct. You adjust. But you cannot correct a direction you have not yet taken. You cannot adjust from a place of perfect stillness. Movement is the price of learning. They pause to look at the road forming steadily behind them. Look at that. That did not exist before today. It exists now. Because I moved. The traveler looks. The road is simple and strong and real. And beyond it, at the far end of the plain, the shapes of other structures are appearing in the amber light. Things being built by all the other moving figures, slowly and surely, and without fanfare. The traveler makes a decision. They choose a direction. And they begin to walk. And behind them, the ground shifts, and the stone rises, and the road begins. At the edge of the plain where the builders work, the land drops gently away into a valley, and through that valley runs the most important river in all of the realm. The river of persistence. It does not look remarkable at first. It is not wide, and it is not deep, and its surface is not glittering in any dramatic way. It moves slowly, the way rivers in deep valleys move when they have no reason to hurry. But the traveler notices something strange about it as they come to stand on its bank. The water flows only in one direction, not north or south, but forward, only ever forward. The river does not eddy or backtrack. It does not pool in moments of doubt. It simply continues, stone by stone, bend by bend, forward. Along the banks of the river, there are stones. Large, smooth stones worn round by long contact with the water. Each one, the traveler realizes after a moment of looking, has a word carved into it. Not deeply. The carving is shallow, worn by weather and time. Some of the words are easy to read. Failure, disappointment, setback, no, not yet, loss, begin again. Others have been worn so smooth that the traveler can only guess at what they might once have said. Every person who has reached the other end of this river, says a voice, has crossed every one of these stones. The traveler turns to find a tall figure standing nearby, a person whose age is impossible to determine, whose expression holds a quality of hard-won calm that only comes from having actually crossed difficult things. not merely imagined crossing them. Not the lucky ones, the traveler asks. There are no lucky ones, the figure says. There are only the ones who kept going and the ones who stopped. They gesture toward the river. Stopping feels very reasonable when you are in the middle of it. The stones make it cold. The current pushes at you. The fog rolls in along these banks at certain hours. You cannot always see the far side. The stopping seems, in that moment, like the sensible choice. Like wisdom, even. Like knowing your limits. They pause. It is not wisdom. It is exhaustion mistaken for insight. The figure sits on one of the bank stones, and the traveler sits near them, and for a while they simply look at the river together. It is peaceful here, in a strange way. The river does not make demands. It simply moves. It simply continues. The water over the stones is clear and cold-looking, and the sound it makes is a kind of constant, low, companionable murmur. I have crossed this river 4 times, the figure says eventually. The traveler looks at them with surprise. You cross it and you come back? The traveler asks. You cross it, the figure says, and you reach the other side and you begin something new. And the beginning of the new thing requires its own river crossing. It never ends. Not if you keep choosing things worth wanting. They smile slightly at the water. I used to find that thought exhausting. Now I find it, I don't know the right word. Interesting? The river is proof that you are still choosing, still wanting things. The people who never cross any river again have stopped wanting things. And there's something that looks like peace about that from the outside. But from the inside, I suspect it is just a different kind of loss. Angela Duckworth, a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, spent years studying the question of what makes people succeed. She studied West Point military cadets, National Spelling Bee finalists, teachers in challenging schools, salespeople, students in inner-city classrooms. Across every single context, she found the same answer. Not talent, not intelligence, not opportunity alone. The single strongest predictor of success was what she called grit, a combination of passion for a long-term goal and the sustained persistence to pursue it, without particular concern for external rewards or recognition, through years and sometimes decades of effort. Grit, Duckworth found, does not relate positively to IQ. The grittiest people are not necessarily the smartest, but they're the ones still standing when others have sat down. They're the ones who cross the stones. And here is the other thing Duckworth found, the thing that people find surprising when they first encounter it. Grit grows. It is not a fixed quality you are either born with or not. It develops through practice, through the repeated experience of beginning something difficult, encountering the inevitable obstacles, and continuing anyway. Each time you continue, something in the brain registers the fact of continuing. It becomes, in a small but real way, part of the story you tell yourself about what you are capable of. And that story, accumulated over time, produces a person who crosses rivers. The river is crossable. The tall figure continues, almost to itself. It has been crossed by people who were not stronger than you, not braver than you, not more gifted than you. By people who were simply willing to take one more step on days when one more step seemed impossible. The traveler looks at the river. They look at the stones. They think about the road they have already started building on the plain behind them. They think about the desire warming their chests since the first flame. And they step into the water. It is cold. Yes, it is. But they're moving. On the far side of the river, the land rises gently through soft green meadows, and in the middle of one of those meadows stands a structure unlike anything else in the realm. It is made entirely of glass, clear, pure, framed in silver, and at first glance it simply looks like a very large mirror. The traveler approaches it slowly. They've seen mirrors before, obviously, but this one is different. Standing before it, they realize immediately that it is not showing them their face. It is showing them who they believe themselves to be. The distinction is enormous. In the ordinary world, a mirror shows surfaces. This one shows something that lives beneath the surface, the accumulated story a person carries about their own nature, their own worth, their own fundamental capacity for the things they desire. It shows the self-image. And self-image, it turns out, is one of the most powerful forces in all of human experience, not because it is what you are, but because it so reliably determines what you do. Some travelers who stand before this mirror see something large and capable, a version of themselves that walks through the world with quiet confidence, not arrogance, but the settled certainty of someone who has made peace with their own potential. Their posture in the mirror is open. Their gaze is steady. Others see something smaller than themselves. A version shrunk by old criticism, by failed attempts, by the voices of people who said you can't or you shouldn't or who do you think you are. The figure in those mirrors stands differently. It occupies less space. It holds its shoulders in. It looks at the desire they are carrying and says, not to anyone in particular, not out loud, I don't know if that's really for someone like me. The psychologist Maxwell Maltz, who was a plastic surgeon in the 1950s, observed something extraordinary in his patients. When he reconstructed a nose or repaired a scar, some patients experienced a complete transformation in how they moved through the world. They became more confident, more open, more joyful, as though the external change had unlocked something internal. But others, equally changed on the outside, experienced no transformation at all. Their self-image had not shifted. Their inner picture of themselves had not updated. And so the new face, in a sense, went unrecognized. It did not match the image held inside. Maltz concluded that the self-image is the lens through which all experience is processed, and that meaningful lasting change must begin there. Research in social psychology has repeatedly confirmed this. The concept is sometimes called behavioral consistency with identity. When a person believes they are a particular kind of person, healthy, capable, creative, disciplined, their behavior tends to bend toward that belief over time. Not perfectly, not without effort, but the gravitational pull of self-image is constant and strong. As the scholar Foote wrote, when doubt of identity creeps in, action is paralyzed. The traveler stands before the mirror for a long time, looking at the image reflected back. They notice where it is true. They notice where it is small, not accurately small, but fear small, history small, the size of something that was measured a long time ago in conditions that no longer exist. A question forms, not spoken but felt, What if this picture is old? What if it was drawn when I was much less than I am now, and it simply hasn't been updated? And the mirror, responding, as everything in the realm responds, to the quality of attention brought to it shifts. Just slightly, just a degree. The figure in the glass stands a little straighter, not because anything in the world has changed, but because a thought changed. And in the realm, a thought is everything. The traveler spends a long time with the mirror, not in a painful, critical way, not the way people sometimes spend time examining themselves and finding fault with what they find. More like the way you might look at a photograph that was taken a long time ago and notice, with genuine warmth and without judgment, both how far you have come and how much you are still becoming. The mirror in the realm is not an instrument of criticism. It is an instrument of honest seeing. Because here is what happens when the self-image is genuinely updated. When the picture you carry of yourself shifts from the old, fear-shrunken version to something more accurately sized, the behavior changes without great effort. You do not have to force yourself to act like a different person. The different person begins to emerge naturally from the new picture, the way a shadow follows its source, without being told to. The research on identity and behavior is consistent on this point. Behavior tends to follow belief about identity, not the other way around. You do not build confidence through confident actions. You build the belief that you are a confident person, and the actions follow. The traveler turns, finally, away from the mirror. The figure in the glass holds the new, slightly taller posture for a moment, and then the mirror goes still, as mirrors do when no one is standing before them. The meadow around the traveler is golden in the warm light of the realm's late afternoon. The path forward is visible and clear. There is a mountain at the eastern edge of the realm, and at the top of that mountain, there is a workshop. Not a grand workshop, not a cathedral. A simple room, not much larger than a modest study, with a wide wooden table at its center and a wall of windows looking out over the whole of the realm. The burning first flame in the center, the vast sky with its living stars, the plain where builders work, the river running forward through its valley, the meadow with the silver-framed mirror catching the light. On the table, when the traveler arrives, there is nothing. Just the clean bare wood, smooth and warm to the touch. A woman is seated in the corner, working quietly. She has the manner of someone deeply absorbed in what they are doing, and when she looks up, there is a focused, particular intelligence in her face. "Sit down," she says, and it is neither a command nor an invitation exactly, more the tone of someone who knows you have been walking a long way and have earned a chair. The traveler sits. "You have your desire," the woman says. "You found it at the first flame." "Yes." "And you have been working on your belief. And you have crossed the river." "Yes." "Good." She leans forward and places her hands on the table. "Now we build the plan." She reaches into a drawer and produces a small crystal, no larger than her palm, clear and faceted, ordinary looking. She places it on the table between them. "A desire without a plan," she says, "is like this crystal in the dark. You cannot see its facets. You cannot understand its structure. You know it exists, but you cannot work with it. You cannot navigate by it. You cannot build anything from it. She reaches up and angles the overhead lamp, a warm, focused light, so that it falls directly on the crystal. Immediately, the facets catch the light and throw it outward in small scattered points across the walls and ceiling. The structure of the crystal becomes visible, the geometry of it, the way the planes relate to one another. A plan, she says, is simply light applied to intention. It allows you to see the structure of what you are building. She begins to talk about planning the way people who have done it seriously and well talk about it, not as something glamorous, not as the making of perfect predictions, but as the discipline of thinking one's desire into its logical components. What would need to be true for this to happen? What is in my control? What must I do first before I can do anything else? Who else might be involved? What are the realistic obstacles? What have others done in a similar direction? Hill, in his writing on success, was emphatic on this point. Organized planning is the bridge between desire and achievement. Not rigid planning, not inflexible planning, not the kind of planning that refuses to update itself when circumstances shift, but the discipline of not simply carrying a vague hope and calling it a strategy. The difference between people who intend to and people who actually do is often not talent or opportunity. It is the step, the plan. Research from implementation intention psychology, the formal name for planning in goal achievement studies, consistently shows that people who specify when, where, and how they will perform the actions required for their goals succeed far more often than those who hold only the goal in mind. The act of making a plan activates different neural systems than the act of simply desiring an outcome. The planning mind organizes, sequences, and anticipates. It gives the brain something navigable. On the table between the traveler and the woman, something begins to materialize. It is faint at first, just a suggestion of structure in the air above the crystal. But as the traveler engages with the questions the woman is asking, as they think specifically about what they want and what it would require, the structure solidifies. Lines appear. Connections form. A map of sorts, not a rigid one, not one that pretends to have every answer, but a framework, a beginning. It is beautiful, the traveler thinks. There is something genuinely beautiful about the moment a vague intention becomes a workable structure. The relief of it. The orientation. The woman leans back. The plan will change, she says. It will need to be revised as you learn more. That is fine. That is expected. A plan is not a cage. It is a compass. You carry it and you adjust it, and when it no longer serves you, you make a better one. She glances out the window at the realm below. But you cannot navigate without one. In the northern part of the realm, where the trees grow dense and the pathways are lit by small glowing lanterns hung between the branches, there is a great circular hall. From the outside, it looks modest, a round building of warm stone, with arched windows and a door that stands open in an easy, welcoming way. But inside, the traveler finds something that takes their breath away. The hall is full of light. Not artificial light, not torches or lanterns, but the light that human minds generate when they are genuinely engaged with one another. When they are actually listening. When they are thinking together rather than merely beside each other. Around a large circular table, people are seated. Different people, different in experience, in knowledge, in the particular shapes of what they have learned and where they have been. And they're talking, but not in the chaotic way that groups sometimes talk, all noise and competition. They are talking in the way that the best conversations move. One person speaks, and the others genuinely listen, and then something emerges from that listening that none of them had quite thought of alone. This is what Napoleon Hill called the mastermind. He described it as the coordination of knowledge and effort between two or more people who work toward a definite purpose in a spirit of harmony. And he said something that researchers would later spend considerable effort confirming. When minds work together in genuine alignment, a third mind is created, something that exceeds the sum of its parts. This is not mystical language dressed up as science. Science has followed the idea all the way to formal research. A landmark study published in Science, the academic journal, involving 699 participants in groups of 2 to 5 found compelling evidence for what researchers called a collective intelligence factor. They labeled it C, in parallel with individual general intelligence. And crucially, C was not strongly predicted by the average intelligence of the individual group members. A group of highly intelligent people, if they were not actually listening to each other, if they were not building on one another's ideas, if they were merely performing in front of each other, that group underperformed groups of people with more modest individual abilities who were genuinely, reciprocally engaged. The quality of the collaboration was more important than the talent of the individuals. In the hall, the traveler finds an empty seat. They sit, and immediately something shifts. A problem the traveler has been holding alone, one of those knots that resists untangling when examined by a single pair of hands, comes up in conversation. And around the table, people offer things the traveler had not thought of, not because they are wiser or more gifted, but because they're different, because they have walked through different landscapes and read different libraries and crossed different rivers. And the combination of their perspective and the traveler's own creates something new. A bridge of light, faint but present, forms between the traveler and the person across the table. And then another, and another. Above the table, the air is brighter than it was. The traveler stays for a long time. At the southern reach of the realm, where the air is warm and carries the scent of something always flowering, lie the gardens of imagination. They are not gardens in the ordinary sense. There are no formal beds, no neat rows, no obvious human imposition on the growth. The gardens have a wilder quality, things growing where they want to, reaching in unexpected directions, intertwining in ways that seem impractical until you understand what they are growing. Because the plants here do not grow fruit. They grow ideas. The traveler walks through them slowly, trailing their hands along stems and leaves. At the end of each branch, instead of a berry or a bud, something sits that resembles, in the dreamlike logic of the realm, a small glowing shape. Some are geometric. Some are formless and soft. Some are recognizably the shapes of invented things, a device, a piece of writing, a musical phrase visible somehow as a curve in the air, a solution to a problem that had seemed unsolvable. These are the things that began as nothing more than daydreams, as what-ifs, as the idle wandering of a mind not yet pinned to anything practical. An older gardener walks the paths with a quiet, proprietary pleasure, occasionally tending to a growth here, redirecting a tendril there. She looks up as the traveler passes. "Every invention that has ever existed in the world," she says by way of greeting, not pausing in her work, "was here first, in a place like this, in someone's mind, when they weren't particularly trying to invent anything, when they were just imagining." She snips a dried stalk. "The airplane was here before the Wright brothers built it. The telephone was here before Alexander Graham Bell found the wire. The vaccine was here before Jenner noticed the milkmaid." The imagination is not decoration. It is the first form every real thing takes. This is factually true, and it is worth sitting with. Every human-made object in the room where you are lying right now, the furniture, the walls, the device you might be listening to, all of it was first a thought, first a wondering, first a what if this were possible. Before any of it existed in matter, it existed in imagination. Imagination is not the opposite of practicality. It is its prerequisite. The traveler pauses before a particular plant. The growth at its tip is taking a shape the traveler recognizes. It is related to the desire they found at the first flame, but more developed. Not just the end point, but a vision of how it might feel, what it might look like, the texture and color and weight of it once it has been made real. The plant is growing something like a complete picture. "How do I care for this one?" the traveler asks. The gardener comes to look. She is quiet for a moment. "Visit it," she says, "regularly. Give it the specific kind of attention that makes things grow in these gardens, which is not forced concentration, not the tight-shouldered effort of trying very hard. That approach dries things out, actually." She gestures around at the lushest growths. "Look at the healthiest ones. They were tended with relaxed attention, with playfulness even, with the willingness to let something be unfinished for a while and see where it wants to go. The imagination flourishes in those conditions. It does not do well under pressure." She walks the traveler to another part of the garden, a section where the plants are particularly full and extraordinary, their shapes beyond anything the traveler might have expected to find in a garden. Here, an invention of some kind is growing. A device that solves a problem the traveler cannot quite identify from this angle, but whose elegant shape communicates clearly that someone spent long hours with it, in dreaming and in deliberate practice, until the right form emerged. There, a piece of writing, visible somehow as a kind of structured light, orderly and warm, the kind of light that reading by a fire produces. And there, further on, the shape of a conversation, a real conversation between people, built from imagination into something that later became reality. All of these were daydreams first, the gardener says, gesturing at the extraordinary garden. Not idle, purposeless daydreams, though even those have their value. Directed imagination. The kind where you take your desire and you let it run. You follow it forward into a possible future, and you populate that future with detail. What does it feel like? What does it smell like? Who is there? What are you doing? You make it vivid and specific and real in the imagination, and the imagination, this garden, begins to work on it. Research in sports psychology has demonstrated this very clearly. Athletes who spend time vividly imagining successful performance activate many of the same neural circuits as athletes who are physically practicing the same movements. Mental rehearsal is not a substitute for physical practice, but it is a genuine complement to it. The brain, exposed to vivid imagined experience, treats it similarly to real experience in terms of the neural learning it produces. The same capacity that allows athletes to improve through visualization allows anyone to strengthen their understanding of a goal, their familiarity with a desired future, their brain's orientation toward it. The traveler looks at the growth at the tip of the plant they found earlier. They allow themselves for a moment to simply enjoy the picture it is making, to feel the pleasure of it, unattached to whether it is immediately useful, to let it be beautiful just for now. And the plant grows slightly more. Come back often, the gardener says, moving away down the path. Do not treat this place as a luxury. It is not. Imagination is not the opposite of doing things. It is the first form every real thing takes. The seeds you plant here are the seeds of what you build out there. She gestures back toward the plain, toward the river, toward the whole of the waking world that waits beyond the realm's edge. Tend your garden well. The traveler stays a little longer, walking slowly among the extraordinary growths, breathing the warm, always flowering air of this southern edge of the realm. Above them, the sky is rich and vast. The stars are showing themselves, even here in the south, even in the warmth of this summer-feeling air. All things were imagined first, every last one. The traveler holds that thought gently and lets it sink. The traveler has been in the gardens for what feels like a long time, a pleasant, unhurried time, when they come to the end of the path and find themselves before two gates. The gates stand side by side in a low stone wall that runs along the boundary of the gardens. One gate is solid and bright. Its frame is clear and distinct, and beyond it, the traveler can see the continuation of the path through the realm, extending forward into new territory, well-lit and navigable. The other gate is made of something that looks like glass but behaves like fog. The edges shift and blur. The frame seems to redefine itself when you look at it directly, and beyond it, everything is indistinct. Not dark, just unresolved. Sitting on a stone between the two gates is a very tired-looking young man. He has been there for a while, clearly. There is something in his posture that speaks of long hours of deliberation, the slight slump of someone who has thought so hard about something for so long that the thinking has become a kind of weight. I can't decide, he says, not to the traveler specifically, more to the space in front of him. What are you choosing between? The traveler asks. That's the thing, the young man says. I know what I want. I've had the desire since I found the first flame. I've worked on my belief. I've crossed the river. I have a plan. I've sat with other minds and built ideas. I have everything. I can't decide to do it. To commit. To go through the right gate and not look back at the other one. He looks at the fog gate. The traveler looks at it too. There is something almost comfortable about it, the indistinctness of it, the way it does not ask you to commit to anything in particular, the way it lets you maintain the pleasant feeling of possibility without the uncomfortable reality of a specific direction. People live at this gate for years, says a voice nearby. The traveler looks around and finds an old man seated against the wall, who was so still he had gone unnoticed. They research until the research itself becomes a way of not deciding. They plan until the planning becomes a substitute for beginning. They talk about what they would do until the talking feels like doing. He stands slowly. Indecision is not neutral. It is a choice. The choice to stay exactly where you are while the days go past. And the extraordinary thing is that quick decisions, definite, committed decisions made with the best available information, tend, in actual practice, to outperform decisions that were endlessly deliberated. The endless deliberation does not usually produce a better decision. It mostly produces more anxiety and a later start. Napoleon Hill noted this across his 20 years of studying achievement in America's most successful people. The one trait they almost universally shared was decisiveness. Not recklessness. Decisiveness is not the same as impulsiveness. It is the willingness to commit to a course of action with the information currently available and to revise if necessary rather than delay until the uncertainty disappears. Because the uncertainty never fully disappears. There is always one more thing to know, one more scenario to imagine, one more risk to weigh. Waiting for certainty before deciding is waiting for something that will not arrive. The tired young man looks between the two gates. And then something shifts in him. The traveler can see it, a small, quiet settling, like a stone dropping through water to rest on the bottom at last. He gets up from his seat on the stone. He stands before the clear gate. He puts his hand on it. He goes through, and behind him, the fog gate dissolves. It simply ceases to be. Because a decision made is a decision made, and the doors that were never chosen have no reason to keep standing once the threshold is crossed. The traveler watches this and feels something resonate in their own chest. Then they too turn toward their own next gate, and they go through. Deep in the eastern part of the realm, on a quiet hillside where the wind moves through long grasses with a sound like breathing, stands the Temple of Habit. It is not grand. This is the first thing you notice about it. No columns, no carved faces, no soaring ceilings or golden light. It is a simple structure, stone worn smooth by long years, paths worn into the earth around it by the feet of the monks who live and work here. And those paths, worn deep into the ground by repetition alone, are the first teaching of this place. The traveler follows one of the paths to the temple entrance and finds, inside, a group of monks engaged in an activity that takes a moment to understand. They are walking. Just walking, around a circular track built into the floor of the inner chamber, a track perhaps 20 feet across. Around and around, slowly and steadily, in meditative silence. And the track, where their feet have worn it most deeply, has carved itself into the stone. Genuine grooves, shaped by nothing more than repetition. One of the monks steps out of the circle and comes to speak with the traveler. The path gets easier, he says, by way of explanation, gesturing at the worn grooves. Not because the distance changes, not because the monks change, exactly, but because the brain, and he taps the side of his head, has been doing this long enough that it no longer requires full attention to do it well. What once demanded conscious effort now runs, as our order puts it, on its own tracks. This is the neuroscience of habit. When a new behavior is first attempted, the prefrontal cortex, the brain's planning and decision-making region, is heavily engaged. It is effortful. It requires willpower, attention, deliberate thought. But as the behavior is repeated day after day, in consistent conditions, the brain begins a process called long-term potentiation, the gradual strengthening of neural pathways through repetition. The prefrontal cortex begins to hand responsibility to the basal ganglia, a deeper brain structure that handles routine, automatic behaviors. Once the basal ganglia have taken ownership of a habit, it runs with very little conscious input. The action becomes, as the monks say, its own track. Research published in the European Journal of Social Psychology found that on average, it takes 66 days for a new behavior to reach automaticity, though this varied considerably from 18 days for very simple behaviors to 254 days for more complex ones. The important finding was not the specific number but the pattern. The difficulty of the behavior levels off and decreases with repetition. What requires tremendous effort at the start requires much less after consistent practice. The monk leads the traveler to a window that looks out over the hillside. Our visitors often arrive expecting us to teach them motivation, he says. The feeling of wanting to, the inspiration that makes things feel effortless. He pauses. We do not teach motivation. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes with mood and circumstance and the weather and how well you slept. What we teach is the discipline of showing up regardless of whether the motivation is present. The action first. The feeling if it comes second. He turns from the window. What you do consistently becomes what you are. This is not metaphor. This is the literal mechanism of how the brain organizes itself. You do not decide who you are and then become that person. You behave in certain ways, repeatedly, and the repeated behavior produces the identity. The monks here do not feel particularly enlightened every morning when they rise for their 4 o'clock practice. They rise anyway, and the rising, repeated across years, has made them into people for whom the rising is simply what happens. The traveler sits in the temple for a while, in one of the carved wooden seats along the wall, watching the monks walk their circular path. The sound of their feet on the worn stone floor is rhythmic and steady. The light through the windows is soft and still. After a time, the traveler rises and rejoins one of the worn paths outside. Their feet find the grooves easily, the same grooves worn by all who have passed this way before. And the path guides them forward without requiring any particular effort or deliberation. Because that is the gift of habit, built carefully and maintained consistently. The path itself becomes the guide. There is always a night of doubt in the realm. This is not a failure of the realm. It is its most important chapter. The traveler is walking the well-worn paths of the central territory when the sky shifts. It happens quickly. The warm amber light overhead draws back, and a different kind of darkness rolls in. Not the beautiful indigo of the realm's usual night, the deep luminous darkness through which the living stars breathe and hold their light. This is a different darkness, a thick, dense, whispering darkness. And the whispers are familiar. that is the unsettling thing. They do not speak in strange voices. They speak in the traveler's own voice. What if it doesn't work? You have come this far and invested this much, and what if, in the end, none of it amounts to anything? Other people have tried what you are trying. Some of them failed. What makes you think you are different from the ones who failed? You are not built for this. You know this about yourself. You have always known. The first flame is visible in the distance, but from here, in this weather of whispers, it looks smaller than it did. The traveler keeps walking toward it, but the walking is harder now. The path is the same path, but it takes more effort to follow. The traveler thinks of every plan they made in the crystal workshop, every belief they practiced under the living stars, every stone they crossed in the cold river. And in the darkness, each of those things seems, briefly, fragile. Not wrong exactly, but tenuous. Like structures seen at night that looked solid in the daylight, but now seem uncertain. This is what doubt does. It does not invent new arguments, generally. It takes real things, real uncertainties, real past failures, real areas of genuine not knowing, and it amplifies them, warps their proportion, makes them seem more definitively predictive than they actually are. The uncertainty that during the bright hours of the realm was simply a fact of the situation. Of course you don't know how this ends. No one does, becomes, in the whispering dark, something that feels like evidence of doom. And this is the chapter that separates those who complete the journey from those who turn back. Because doubt is not a sign of weakness. It is not evidence of error. It is not the realm's way of telling you that you have made the wrong choices. Doubt is, as it turns out, simply what the brain does when it encounters sustained uncertainty and effort without yet having the reward of visible success. Fear itself. Napoleon Hill identified it as the greatest obstacle to achievement, greater even than lack of skill or knowledge or opportunity, is understood now by psychology as a learned pattern. The brain is designed to protect against threat, and when it has learned to associate effort with disappointment or desire with loss, it generates the feeling of fear as a defensive response. It fires up the alarm. It says, "Be careful. This territory is dangerous. You have been hurt before in places that felt like this." It is not always wrong, this alarm, but it fires indiscriminately. It fires for genuine danger, and it fires for imagined danger, and it fires for the simple fact of uncertainty, which is not danger at all, but merely the fundamental condition of attempting anything new. Psychologists who study the anxiety avoidance cycle describe how the brain, when it associates something with threat, including the threat of disappointment, the threat of failure, the threat of embarrassment, generates discomfort as a way of steering you away from the associated thing. And if you listen to the discomfort, if you avoid the thing, the discomfort temporarily eases. The alarm goes quiet, and the brain registers that avoidance worked and files that information away and makes the avoidance slightly easier next time. This is how people end up very small, not through any single dramatic choice, but through many small, quiet retreats, each one individually reasonable, collectively devastating. The traveler stands in the middle of the whispering darkness. The wind picks up. The whispers intensify. And then the traveler does something small and remarkable. They do not try to silence the whispers. They do not argue with them. They simply notice them the way you might notice the weather. Yes, there is wind tonight. Yes, it is cold, without deciding that the wind is telling the truth about anything important. They take one step forward, and then another. The whispers do not stop, but the traveler moves through them anyway. Not because the doubt has been defeated, it has not been defeated, but because the doubt, recognized for what it is, a pattern in the brain, an old protective response, not a prophecy, loses its authority over the body's movement. The feeling does not have to change for the step to be taken. This is the insight that changes things. When it is truly understood, you do not need to feel confident to act confidently. You do not need to feel fearless to move forward through fear. The feeling and the movement are separate. You can choose the movement regardless of the feeling. And here is what the realm teaches in its 13th chapter, In the Darkness with the Whispers. The presence of doubt is not a reason to stop. It is a sign that you are attempting something real and difficult. Easy things do not generate this particular wind. Only the worthwhile ones do. The traveler walks, slowly, steadily, through the whispering dark. The traveler walks through the night of doubt, and it takes as long as it takes, longer than they would have chosen, shorter than they feared. And then, by degrees so gradual they are almost imperceptible, the darkness thins. The whispering wind drops to silence, and the realm brightens. Not with dramatic suddenness, not with a burst of light or a thunderclap of awakening. It brightens the way mornings brighten. Slowly, incrementally, the way each minute of dawn is only barely distinguishable from the minute before it, until you look up and find that somehow, while you are walking, the whole landscape has changed. The first flame in the center of the realm burns full and steady. The stars in the sky above are clear and unwavering. The paths are solid underfoot. The buildings and gardens and halls of this extraordinary place are illuminated in a warm, even, generous light that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere specific. The traveler stops and looks around, and something within them, something that has been building very quietly through all the chapters of this journey, completes. An elder of the realm approaches. She is the kind of person whose presence creates stillness in the air around them. She sits on a smooth stone beside the path and waits while the traveler takes in what they are seeing. "You expected it to look different," the elder says, finally. "I thought there would be a moment," the traveler says. "A specific moment where the power arrived, where it felt obvious." The elder nods. Everyone expects that. A flash of light, a voice, something unmistakable and external. She pauses. But that is not how it works. The infinite power you came here to find was not in a particular place in the realm. It was not at the first flame, though the first flame was important. It was not in the library or the temple or the gardens, though each of those was necessary. She looks out over the realm. The realm is not a place, traveler. It never was. The traveler waits. The realm, the elder says, is the aligned state of your own consciousness. When desire and belief and imagination and habit and decision and persistence and the wisdom of others all move in the same direction, when the conscious mind and the deep subconscious are working together rather than against each other, That is what this place feels like from the inside. This brightness, this steadiness, this sense of capacity. It is not external power arriving into you. It is internal power unblocked. Neuroscience calls this something like coherence. When the thinking parts of the brain and the feeling parts, the prefrontal cortex and the emotional limbic structures, are aligned rather than in conflict, the system functions with a qualitatively different efficiency. The chronic internal friction of wanting one thing and fearing it simultaneously, of setting goals and simultaneously believing you are unlikely to achieve them, of beginning things and being constantly ambushed by doubt, that friction drains enormous amounts of cognitive and emotional energy. When the system is aligned, the energy that was consumed by friction becomes available for something else, something more. The infinite power, the elder says, is not something added to you. It is what you become when the subtraction stops. The traveler stands in the brightened realm and feels, perhaps for the first time, the enormous potential of a mind no longer working against itself. It is not a feeling of excitement exactly. It is quieter than that. It is the feeling of a room that has had its furniture rearranged so that the light falls differently, and suddenly you can see things that were always there, but were hidden in the shadow. The elder stands. "You know what to do now," she says simply. "You have always known." The knowing just had to be cleared of what was covering it. She walks away into the realm, and the traveler breathes the morning air of this inner world and turns toward the path home. The path back to the edge of the realm is not the same path the traveler came in on. It never is, because the traveler who is leaving is not the same traveler who arrived. The landscape looks different through the eyes of someone who has crossed the river and stood before the mirror and passed through the gate and survived the night of doubt. The hills are the same hills. The grasses are the same grasses. The silver-leafed trees still whisper in whatever wind moves through this place. But the quality of the traveler's attention is different. They see more. They notice the way the light falls. They notice the small beauty of it, the particular indigo of the sky beginning to shift toward dawn, the way the first flame casts long warm shadows across the meadow, the sound of the river running forward through the valley, always forward. At the edge of the realm, where the hillside path begins to lead upward and away, the traveler stops and turns to look back at the whole of it one last time. It is, from this vantage, even more beautiful than when they arrived. Not because it has changed, but because the eye doing the looking has changed. And that is one of the deepest secrets of the realm, that what you find here is largely determined by what you bring. There is a final figure waiting near the edge, a quiet person who seems, in their demeanor, to belong equally to this world and the waking world the traveler is returning to. They nod as the traveler approaches. "People sometimes arrive here and want to stay," the figure says. "They find it easier here, in the clarity of the inner world, than out there in the complexity of the actual life." They gesture back toward the waking world. Do you understand why that would be a mistake? Because, the traveler says slowly, none of this becomes real if it stays here. Exactly, the figure says. The desire named at the first flame means nothing if it never becomes an action in the world. The belief does not reshape anything if it is only held in theory. The plans laid in the crystal workshop do not build anything if the first step is not taken on actual ground, with real materials in real time. They pause. Knowledge must be lived. The realm gives you the orientation. The waking world is where you walk in it. Hill wrote something in his work that has been quoted and returned to across the nearly 90 years since it was published. The principles work anywhere. They do not require special conditions. They do not require particular luck or timing or circumstance. They operate through the mind of whoever is willing to apply them, regardless of where that person finds themselves or what they are working toward. The teacher and the entrepreneur and the parent and the artist and the athlete and the scientist, the same principles, held with the same consistency and the same commitment, produce results in every domain of human endeavor. The traveler steps onto the upward path. Behind them, the realm glows warmly in its pre-dawn light. The stars are beginning to pale at the eastern edge of the sky. The first flame burns on, as it always does, feeding itself on the desires of every traveler who has ever stood before it and named what they truly want. The traveler climbs, and as they climb, they are already carrying what they found. The desire, clear and warm. The belief, built stone by stone. The plan, a working compass. The memory of the river crossed, the night survived. The gate passed through. The knowledge of the library and how to fill it, of the temple and what its monks practice, of the chamber and the light that minds make together. All of it travels with them. All of it wakes. The traveler wakes into the ordinary world. Their room is their room. The ceiling is the familiar ceiling. The weight of the body on the mattress is the known weight of the body, real and solid and present. But something is different. It is not dramatic. Not the transformation of a person who has been struck by lightning or visited by angels or reached the summit of something that can be photographed. It is quieter than that. It is the difference between a room before the curtains are opened and after. The room is the same room, but the light is different. And in the light, you can see the realm of infinite powers. The traveler understands now, has not been left behind. It cannot be left behind. It is not a place separate from the self. It is the self in a particular state of alignment, of clarity, of conscious and intentional direction. The realm exists inside thought. And thought is the one thing that never stops, that never sleeps entirely, that follows us into the waking day and back into the dreaming night. This is also why the realm expands. Every night, as people sleep, the realm grows. Not because of anything supernatural, because of the mechanics of how the human mind processes its experience. During sleep, the brain consolidates the day's learning, strengthens new neural pathways, processes emotional experience, rehearses acquired skills. The subconscious library is reorganized. The habits are reinforced or weakened. The seeds planted in the gardens of imagination are tended by the sleeping mind without conscious interference. Scientists who study sleep have found that the sleeping brain does not simply switch off and wait for morning. The hippocampus, the part of the brain most involved in forming new memories, reactivates during sleep, replaying the experiences of the day in compressed form, transferring information to the cortex for long-term storage. Sleep is, in the most literal neurological sense, when learning is finalized. When the day's new ideas become part of the architecture of the mind. When the thoughts you rehearsed in the library of the subconscious sink deeper into the structure that will generate tomorrow's thoughts and behaviors. Every sleeper enters the realm, not always consciously, not always by following the path the traveler followed tonight. But the processes of the realm are at work in every sleeping mind, building, connecting, filing, adjusting, preparing. The question is only whether any of it is intentional. The traveler lies in the ordinary room, in the ordinary morning light, and holds the desire they found at the first flame. They feel its warmth and its clarity. They think about the belief they are building, the steady stars. They think about the plan, the crystal map. They think about the river and the next step and the one after that. And they think about what it means that the journey continues. Not as a discouraging thought, not as a reminder of how much remains, but as something close to its opposite. The journey continues because the traveler is still choosing things worth wanting. The journey continues because the realm expands, and the expanding means that there is always more to explore, more to understand, more of the inner world that has not yet been mapped. Hill wrote in the years after Think and Grow Rich that the principles he had distilled applied not just to the accumulation of material things, but to the full architecture of a life, to relationships, to creative work, to the pursuit of meaning, to the development of character. The principles, he said, work anywhere that a human mind is willing to apply them. They do not require particular luck or timing or circumstance. They operate through the mind of whoever is willing to use them, regardless of where that person begins. The traveler, lying in the morning light, thinks about this. They came to the realm carrying a weight they could not name. They are leaving it not lighter exactly, but differently weighted. The heaviness of confusion replaced by the orientation of purpose. The formlessness of hope replaced by the specificity of desire. The passive hoping that things would be different replaced by the active intention to move in a particular direction, one step at a time, the road forming underfoot as it forms for every builder who is willing to walk. And something that was not present yesterday is present now. Not certainty. Certainty is not promised here, and anyone who promises it is selling something other than truth. But direction. Promised here, and anyone who promises it is selling something other than truth. But direction. And a sense of capacity. And the knowledge that the path forms as you walk it, stone by stone, step by step, always forward. The realm will be here tonight, and tomorrow night, and every night for the rest of the traveler's life, available and waiting in the space between one breath and the next, in the silence behind thought, in the deep interior place where all journeys begin. Growth never ends here. The realm expands as humans dream. And you're dreaming. Right now, as these words settle into the quieter layers of your listening, as your eyes rest behind their closed lids and your breath moves slowly and without effort, the realm is receiving you. It has been receiving you all along. You have been here before, in the small hours of 100 different nights, without ever knowing the name of what you were crossing. Now you know. The flame of desire is burning for you. The stars of belief are in your sky. The library holds every thought you have ever returned to, and it is waiting to receive new ones. The builders on the plain are showing you that the road forms as you walk it. The river is crossable. The mirror shows what you believe yourself to be, and beliefs can change. The workshop table is clean and waiting. The circular hall is full of light and minds that want to build something with yours. The gardens have always been growing your ideas, even when you weren't paying attention. The gate is waiting for your decision. The temple monks are walking their paths. And the night of doubt, when it comes, and it will come, is only wind. You are not a passive visitor to the realm. You are its builder. Every consistent thought you return to adds a book to the library. Every step you take on the plane lays another stone in the road. Every crossing of the river makes the next one more possible. Every night you spend in the temple of habit deepens the grooves that make the good things easier. The realm becomes more navigable the more you navigate it. It becomes more vivid the more you choose to see it. Let your body grow heavier now. Let your breathing slow even further. Let the ordinary world recede to its proper distance, and let the realm hold you. You are a traveler who has crossed the threshold tonight, and you are carrying something home with you. Something that belongs to you. Something that has always been yours, waiting patiently for you to arrive and claim it. The journey does not end at the edge of sleep. It continues in the morning, in the first decision of the day, in the choice to take one step in the direction of the life you have named. And then the next decision, and the one after that. Small, consistent, compounding. Sleep now. Dream well. The journey continues in the morning. Thank you so much for spending time here tonight. If this story moved you, if it gave you something to think about, or simply gave you the rest you were looking for, we would love it if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Sleep Bedtime Stories. Every one of those small gestures helps us bring more stories like this one to more people who might need them. We'll be here again very soon, waiting to take you somewhere new. Until then, rest well. The realm is always open. Good night.